Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Criminally Mental Podcast, sponsored by Manscaped. My name is Cody, or Schizophrenic Hippie.
And my name is Zachary, the Kosher Cowboy Galloway. And here to introduce the show, here's the friend of our show and the host of the VT Network, Deadman.
Welcome to the Criminally Mental Podcast, where we talk about mental health and the criminal justice system, with your two hosts, Cody Green and Zach Galloway, currently both on parole and compassionate release. Now, here's the show.
Sometimes I send him text messages that I know are going to give me a weird response back. Like, I'll text him in the middle of the night, like, hey, how's that banana doing? And I know he'll text me back something weird. And when I read it in his voice. And it's how I go to sleep now. He probably hates me. He no doubt probably hates me. But that is how I go to sleep. I just think we should all know that.
I don't know if anyone needed to know that. At this point, I'm sure everyone is well aware of your obsession with his voice. And don't get me wrong, I like his voice too, but I mean, it's getting a little weird. I'm scared for him now. If he ever shows up missing, I am definitely going to call the cops and have them check your basement. Because I just think you're going to capture him and have him say things for you all the time. And I'm really worried about his well-being.
Well, I mean, all I have to say to that is if he was worried about his well-being, he should have read through that contract that he signed before going on the show. Because if he did, he would know that a certain amount, a healthy amount, of torture is expected while being on the Criminally Mental Podcast. That is true. We require it here at the office, kind of like community service hours. You have to be tortured so many hours of the week. That's a real thing. It helps with the synergy here at the podcast.
Yeah, that's not a thing, Zach. I don't know where you got that.
We do it. We do it, and I'm tired of pretending like we don't do it because it helps the morale. Most of the people who still speak very highly of it. So
that's true, and that's how we weed out the podcast guests who can't handle it, because it's high level stuff here at the professional podcast that we hold.
Exactly. That's why we don't do interns anymore. Remember that? do you remember intern Jeff? Do you remember intern Jeff?
Poor Jeff.
Yeah, nobody remembers intern Jeff. Yeah, nobody does. Jeff.
Anyway. How are things going on your end of the state, Zach? Any big news going on for you? I know it's been kind of a slow week for the two of us.
Honestly, man, it's been great settling into a new place. It's been wonderful spending time with my fiance. I met my fiance's mom for the first time face to face at an Outback Steakhouse the other day, and I was so anxious. I was so anxious and so nervous about that. I had that stupid anxiety that you usually feel before prom as a 16-year-old. That was the kind of anxiety I was dealing with. It's been great. It's been great. Everything we've been doing here. So
I mean, what would his mom be worried about? Just a felon who's been to prison, that's the perfect person for her son to marry, right? I mean, come on.
Realistically, that's just I understand. Me on paper doesn't look that good, I get that. That's just real life.
Yeah. That might be a good conversation topic at one point, because I know when I talk about my schizophrenia, people always ask, how soon in relationships do you bring that up? Well, I've been with my wife before I developed schizophrenia, so we could always end up talking about how soon do you bring up a criminal record, or do you wait for them to look it up themselves and find out? Because I've never really thought about that.
I think for me, it was it was kind of easier for me because, I had known him before I got locked up for years, years before that. And then I just disappeared. So it was really easy for me when I popped back into the scene and kind of came back to life. The explanation of, I've been in prison. That's what I've been locked up one way or another. So I kind of lucked out with that. But that was one of the first conversations we had. So I think it was kind of easy to build off of that, going into it.
And that's what I always recommend to people too. I'm like, hey, maybe not on the first date, but definitely really early on. You probably want to disclose that kind of stuff, whether it's a mental illness or a prison record or something like that. Like, probably want to have that conversation pretty early on.
Well, I feel like the earlier you have that conversation, the easier it is.
Yeah.
I mean, because the longer you kind of draw that out, you risk the worst case scenario where they find out not from you. They Google your name or something like that happens, or a family member tells them. Like, that's the least ideal situation, obviously.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine, like, if you hadn't told your boyfriend and he was surfing online and found your mugshots, because your mugshots aren't like anyone's mugshots I've seen. Your mugshots are, like, incredibly, like, different from how you look now. So I couldn't imagine them finding that on their own. Oh my God. Well, and I think that about mugshots in general. Imagine you're dating someone, you go to Google them, and the first thing you see is mugshots. That's not a great look.
Especially with mine, man. Oh, man. That'd be rough. That'd be real rough.
You know what, though? Like, your mugshots, they're tough to look at, but, like, for you, it's got to be, like, somewhat rewarding to look at the difference, because, like, you look healthy, man. I literally show the people I work with your mugshot versus how you look now. People, it looks like you're a 60-year-old man in those mugshots, and now you look, not quite 60.
Slightly less than 60. I'll take whatever I can get at this point. I don't care.
But honestly, dude, like, it's a whole transformation for you. And that's like my mugshots, the only difference is I'm no hair on my face and I have a buzz cut and I look pissed off. That's the only thing with my mugshots. But you're like, and it's kind of like my brother's too. He was doing meth at the time, so he had like scars on his face and stuff from picking. And so like, it's definitely noticeable. And I think that's got to be somewhat rewarding to be able to look back and see how big of a change you've made.
I feel both ends of it. It is rewarding to see how far I've come. Obviously, just physical changes alone. What I've been able to just accomplish with my body from the time I was locked up a little over a year ago was when I got out. And I mean, obviously I wasn't looking like that when I got out, but at the same time, it's also embarrassing. And I do kind of still feel the sting of embarrassment a little bit.
Yeah.
Not so much that like it makes me like ashamed to put it out there, but at the same time, like I look at those pictures and I understand they're pictures of me, but I have a very hard time remembering what that's really like. I get little flashes of those feelings from time to time, but I can't imagine being in the depths of an addiction like that and thinking this is okay, this is what I wanted. So I feel both ends of it.
Yeah, and that's a super good point too, because we are bringing on Jess Kent today, and she also has struggled with addiction as well. And that's something we could talk about, is how at any point in the middle of that did we all think, oh, this is where I want to be. This is what I want to be doing. Because I look back and I think the same thing. I'm like, why? Why did I think that was a good idea?
Wait. Back up. Who is it?
Oh, Zach, did I not tell you?
No. I know, but for the audience, say the name one more time because I don't think they know.
Jessica Kent. She's been on a previous episode. Maybe you remember.
Okay, was she the one who told the prison story where she was pregnant in prison, right?
Yes, yep. And what else did you do on the show?
She complimented you way too much. She was way too nice to you. This wasn't it. We agreed the people who were not, or that were too nice to you, didn't come back on the show. That was a thing.
I have audio evidence that will back me up. At the very end of the podcast, you offered to let her come back. Without further ado, we are going to welcome the famous YouTuber, the Tik Toker, and the prison reform advocate, Jessica Kent.
Zach loves me. He like secretly just loves me so much. So. Don't deny it.
I hate the both of you with such passion.
Just warms my soul.
Just such passion.
It's your love for me that keeps me going.
It's good to see you though, Jessica. Jessica, can you hear us though? Do you have headphones on?
I'm about to get up and go.
Yeah, Zach was
I was wearing these.
Yeah, he was harassing our guest because of her big, admittedly pretty large headphones.
I was not harassing anybody. That is a lie from the radical left. I was simply offering a positive fashion critique of some amazing accessories.
That's all it was. Amazon be lying because these did not look that big when I bought them. So,
well, they probably used like a model like Zach, whose head and ego are so big that it makes him look almost microscopic.
Part of that's actually untrue because my head is actually kind of small for the amount of just crazy, awesome things I have inside of it. So half of that's true. Ego part, spot on. So,
well, I suppose when you're like 5'3", your head can't be that big, right?
Well, I mean, it helped with my, career in the circus as a child.
Oh, wow. I didn't know Rob Schneider was in the circus.
Yes!
Rob Schneider joke. Someone hit the bell.
10 minutes in, Rob Schneider.
Oh, jeez.
I love that. That's amazing. But while you were in the backstage, Jess, we were just, talking a little bit about addiction, and addiction is one of the things I think we touched on the last time you were on the episode. But before we get into that, I want to thank you again for being here, with us because I didn't give you a whole lot of prep time, and you gave me so much prep time when you invited me onto your podcast. Zach, have you been on her podcast yet, by the way?
Shit. Oh, Jessica, do you have a podcast? Is that something you do?
Not often.
Is that like
interested?
Is that like a little side project you have going on? Is that a little thing you have?
I haven't invited you because I've been busy, but I love you and you're welcome on the podcast anytime.
Oh, is that right?
Don't take this from me. Just say he's not invited.
Invited.
But anyways, so we were talking a little bit about addiction, and do you remember, I think most people who struggle with addiction remember being in that place where they were just like, yeah, this is what I'm doing, this is what I want to do, and I'm okay with this. Do you remember that? And like, do you ever look back and think how weird that is? Because
excuse me. So yeah, super weird. But that's so interesting that you bring that up because for so long I was like, there's nothing wrong with me. Get away from me with your therapy, with your drug and alcohol classes. I'm fine. I'm okay. It's other people that are like homeless, or I had created this box of what I thought a really bad addict was. And because I always had money, because I was a drug dealer, I thought I was okay. And then life got crazy. So for a long period of time, I was very angry and I'm like, no, I'm fine. I'm a heroin addict. I'm like Kurt Cobain in it, man. It's totally cool. What? And then shit got hard and it got bad. And like, I did become homeless and I became all the things that I had created in my mind for what I thought a bad addict was. So like I got hit with the humility stick so many times. I got my ass kicked by that thing. And then finally my breaking point was finding out I was pregnant in jail, but I was angry. You're not going to tell me I can't do heroin. It's just who I am. And if you have a problem with that, you can fuck right off.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's like, I think there's a very interesting part of addiction and drugs that is super like, oh, this is amazing. This is awesome. I don't have to do shit I don't want to do. And I can just live like this, make money off selling drugs. And there's this whole idea that like, it's a glorified lifestyle because not everyone's doing it. And I would argue that you guys, I don't know so much about like what your mugshot looked like, Jess, but we were just talking about Zach's. And I would argue that he had addiction issues more than I struggled with. Because just based on his mugshots, I struggled with addiction, but it definitely seems like he probably had more of a struggle. And I don't like ranking struggles, but there definitely is people who go through it harder, I think. And Zach, just based on your mugshots, like, what was that like for you having to, go through probably really intense addiction for a long period of time.
It was, I mean, the weirdest thing about it was I went into that period of my life thinking like every day was a new rock bottom for a long time. You know, at first when you're just couch surfing to actually being on the street to my situation where you end up, you know, working the door at a trap house to fucking pay rent, which leads you into doing just crazy shit. And every day it's like, it seems like the things you thought you would never do, at least the stuff that you promised you would never do, or at least if you did do, you would get help if you did. Those were the things that you would do every day, or at least that was for me. And that's probably what sticks out the most in that point
I
in
don't
time.
think I've ever seen a mugshot and then like a glow up in recovery as fierce as yours.
Well,
it
thank
doesn't
you.
even look like you, you know, so you look amazing now.
It's very strange looking. We were talking about it before because I do understand that it's me, and I just can't identify with that individual anymore. You know, it's just so weird to look at. But yeah,
That makes sense.
Well, and I think no matter how bad the mugshot is, we all have that where I'm looking back. And for me, I was suffering from like really bad schizophrenic symptoms. And that was the time where I was delusional and I didn't believe I had schizophrenia. So when I look back, that's more what I think of. Like I look at my face and I just like, I don't show any emotions in that mugshot, but I know I was feeling a lot of different things. Like, and I just look back on it and I'm like, why did I choose to look like that? Like, why didn't I go get help back then? And you look back and you wonder like what you could have done different. And I don't know. It's tough to like be able to look at yourself because not everyone has mugshots. And I don't think they realize how intense it is to look back at a picture of you at some of your lowest points.
What's interesting is like I was so against taking pictures. I would not let my friends take pictures of me. I was a drug dealer and I was usually on the run from something or someone. So I'm like, don't take pictures of me. So my mugshots are some of the only pictures I have when I was really struggling. You know, I have a couple pictures if I was feeling really good. I might snap a selfie or snap a picture. But also that was 2011. You know, we weren't like taking selfies the way that we are now back in 2011, 2008, 2006, when I was really, really bad. And thank the Lord, because I was a flaming hot mess. And I was really like aggressive about pictures. Like, I know I look like shit. I don't need you to take a picture of me to tell me I look like shit. Like, I see my face.
right.
I didn't have a lot of pictures of me back then, but the weirdest thing was because I was really delusional and paranoid. So like, because my symptoms had just started back then, my symptoms started and then I kind of started getting into using. But when my symptoms started, I was so paranoid and I was delusional. So I was afraid if people took pictures of me, there would be like evidence. And I don't know of what, because most of the time they were just taking pictures. Like even my wife, I wouldn't let her take pictures at the time. And so there's only a few pictures you can find of me that aren't mugshots, like you just said. And I wonder if that's got to be a pretty consistent thing with people that are struggling with addiction, because like you said, we know what we look like. I think people see addicts and think they have no idea that they look like they do. I
think there is something to be said about that, like one phase of addiction that you go through where you still think it's working, you know, like where you're in your mind, it's totally working for you. You're getting shit done. You know, it's helping me do whatever it is I need to fucking do. Yeah, blah, blah. But to everyone else, you're just like an absolute fucking train wreck of a mess.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, I do believe that phase of addiction definitely happens. I mean, I had that for damn sure.
Yeah, I think there's the glorifying stage early on, you know, where you're like, this is awesome. I can do blow and go to work and like we're just glorifying drugs. And then there's probably a bit of a fall off where you probably lose your job, become homeless, or you're in a trap house or something. And then there probably is like I do vaguely remember a like moment where I was like, you know, not the best case scenario, but I'm making it work and I'm getting by. And yeah. So I think that is a good point too. I wonder how many stages of addiction like everyone goes through, because when I talk about addiction with people, it's so consistent, it seems like across the board.
That'd be a hard thing to catalog, I feel, because I mean, there's a lot of fucking, I mean, if you go to any recovery meeting, it's basically the same story told over and over again. It's all the same goddamn story. Like nobody has come in with like a single interesting thing to say, and it's good. But I mean, that's fine. There's a little bit of comfort in that, knowing that everyone basically has more or less the same tragic story. So I mean, I'm sure it would be possible to catalog what the stages of that would be. It would just be kind of crazy too.
Like, I
Well,
don't know if this is weird. Sorry to interrupt you, but
no,
I was like protective over my addiction because I thought I was protecting myself. And I'm just a really combative like person anyway. And I would stop. That's a really good comment, Laura. I would stop periodically. I'd stop for a week, maybe 2 weeks. I would stop heroin and use Suboxone. And I'm like, I'm fine. I can do that. I can stop. I can get on assistance. Or I would just detox and withdraw altogether and use nothing. And I would change over from, heroin to Jack Daniels straight out the bottle, like walking down the street like a lunatic, And I thought, I'm fine. I can change my addiction. I can curb my addiction. I can stop my addiction. And I'm in complete control until I wasn't, until I couldn't stop for a week or a month or, a 60-day parole violation kicked my ass and I was fiending, for a long time. So it was just a really like roller coaster kind of experience for me.
It's so interesting, and that's how you dealt with your addiction. For me, it was such a stupid relationship with me with my addiction. From the very first time I tried, especially heroin and stuff like that, and just any of the harder drugs, I knew like this is what I want my life to be about from now on. Like that was the insanity of that high that I felt. And from that point on, like I knew without a doubt, whatever I was doing was more or less for the next high. Like it was an instant mania for me. So,
well, and then like for me, it was anything to momentarily silence the voices that I was having, anything to get symptom relief, even no matter how short it was, I would go through days of paranoia and scratching my arms and face just because I got a few minutes of silence or no hallucination. Like it was insane. And it seemed like the harder the drugs I tried, the longer I went without having. And that's why so many people, I think, with schizophrenia do drugs, because no one wants to go in and get diagnosed and be labeled as a schizophrenic person, especially with the stigma around it. But like, I was like, if I do these drugs, I can get moments of relief, just moments. That's all I wanted. And I would go and do that and then suffer with 2 days of worse symptoms and paranoia. And like to the point where my wife would ask me a question, my girlfriend at the time, by the way, shout out to her for sticking it out for so fucking long.
seriously.
But like she would ask me a question and I would speak, but the words wouldn't make any sense. I was delusional because I would just keep using drugs for momentary relief. And then it would just cause my symptoms get worse and worse. And it seems like no matter how you got into addiction, everyone looks at you like garbage. Like no matter what caused it, whether it was trauma or it was, the people around you who supported you were drug users and that's how you got into it. For me, it was mental illness, but it's like everyone's on the same level with how they're treated, I feel like. And I feel like that's why recovery communities work sometimes, is because we do kind of get the same treatment from the general public. I also think there is some toxicity in recovery communities that me and Zach have talked about previously on the show too.
I don't know where the lie is, but I get stigma because I sold drugs, so people want to throw that back at me, telling me that, I helped destroy my community and I did all of these things. I didn't see it like that back then. I wasn't trying to force anyone to take drugs. They were like beating down my door and blowing up my phone and begging me for them. And they wanted to pay me a ridiculous amount of money for them. So I justified it. Now looking back, I have a lot of time and distance from that old life. I see how awful that was. And I see that it was not right. And I took full responsibility and served my time in prison and got out of that life. But I was stuck in the addiction and then the culture surrounding selling drugs, so much so that I thought that I would just be that forever. And I'm like, I'm miserable, but I don't know how to get out. How do I get out of this? And then once I realized, just leave, just stop, get away from these people. leave the state if you have to, just go and be on your own, then you can get out of it. And I found such peace in that, and peace in being by myself and building something completely outside of where I'm from. I'm from nowhere, New York, upstate New York, where no one's ever heard of it before. And it took me having a baby in prison to realize, like, oh shit, this isn't just about me. Like, this affects people that care about me too. And I was like really selfish for a really long time. But that backlash and that stigma, I feel like is going to be carried for as long as I live, because I am so open, I'm so loud about my recovery. So I feel like that's going to come regardless, no matter what I do. I could do makeup on the internet and people are going to be like, bitch, you don't know how to do makeup. Or I could talk about, my addiction, and they're going to come at me either way. So for me, like, I'll take it. I'll take the stigma if it means I can help people, feel less alone.
Absolutely. So I have a question for both of you, because I got sober shortly before I was incarcerated. Did either of you struggle with addiction while you were incarcerated? Because I know that is a problem that people don't talk about a lot. And I know Colin talked about how when he first went into prison, he was still using and selling, which was how he made his money, and I know, Zach, you've talked a little bit about making hooch, but I don't think I've ever asked you about if you were using it all when you first went in. So, and feel free to answer that. You guys also don't have to. I do wonder about that, because I know that there are a lot of people who get in and they think, oh, this is going to be my separation from drugs, and then find out it's just as easy, if not easier, to get drugs while you're in.
Okay, first of all, why would you qualify that with you don't have to answer if you don't want to? We're on a show called the Criminally Mental Podcast.
I just don't want to put anyone in a tough spot.
This is like actually a job, right? This is what we do. I like, if we could get maybe a smidge more professionalism in the studio today.
It's a job for us. Jess doesn't have to be here. I'm not going to force her to answer any questions.
I'm just saying, maybe just a tear. Just knock it up. Knock it up a bit.
Okay.
No, I'm very transparent. I'll share anything, but Zach, you go first.
For me, so like I had a horrible detox when I got locked up, because I was coming off of legitimately everything under the sun. I had, obviously I had been doing heroin at the time. I had been shooting meth as well, meth and heroin simultaneously. I had also been taking Xanax religiously. I had been drinking. So like I went in kicking everything at once so badly that they put me in the infirmary just in the county for a bit, and actually took me into the general hospital for a while too, because that's how bad my withdrawals were. Like I was having seizures and things like that. So when I got through with those, I just decided that while I was locked up, I wasn't going to do anything that would make me feel like that again, essentially. So like anytime the opportunity came up for me, because it became obvious that I was going to be doing at least a little bit of time, every time the opportunity came up to even be around people who had that connection, or if something came on the art and it was known, like I would make sure that I had people that I was associated with that I was accountable to, and they would actually kind of help guide me away from those people. A lot of the people in my stories did that. Like Chucky did that a lot. Penguin did that a lot. But while I was locked up, no, just because I knew how terrible it would be for me to be addicted while locked up. So that's my answer.
Well, mine takes a hard left from there, because I chased it from day one. Maybe the second time I was arrested, I had heroin in my pocket, and I was able to make the guard feel very uncomfortable in a strip search. And I was able to get heroin from my pocket into the little pocket on the jumpsuit that you have to wear in jail. And I was really good at that. I was really good at distracting officers and being witty or funny or making them feel uncomfortable so they wouldn't notice. And, I don't talk a lot about my time in New York because I was high and I was chasing drugs. I loved when new people came in, because I'm like, did you bring something in? And I would follow them right in their cell. I was friends with a correctional officer on the outside. I worked as a CNA for this nursing home in that town, and he worked third shift as a correctional officer. And he came in, and the first time he saw me, he was like, what the hell are you doing here? And I'm like, I'm not coming to work tonight. Like, this is where I live now. I thought it was a big joke, and I made him bring me in pills, and I was just really shitty with that. I would chase anything, alcohol, pills, and that was really all I did. Moving forward from there, once I got locked up in Arkansas, the only time that I tried to get drugs, I tried to sell things that I could find. So the only thing I was able to get in those facilities in the South was tobacco, which is not a drug, I guess, and weed. And I wouldn't be smoking. I would sell that so that I could eat. And I was very good at finding any kind of contraband. So
It's a good hustle to have, though. I mean, honestly, as far as prison hustles goes, that's a pretty good one to have. That's right above doing tattooing, I think. So,
I mean, I would steal pens out of correctional officers' pockets. Like I was bold, like I would just like bump into them really quick and take them out of the little thing that they had
were
there.
you just at the give no fucks level? Was that just what was happening? Like you were just
Zero fucks.
All right, I can respect that. I can remember living on the corner of no fucks and given. I mean, that's I can remember that being an emotion.
When I was like 18, 19, 20, I was young, and I didn't want anyone to think that time was going to affect me. This isn't hard time. Like, what are you talking about? I can do a little bit of time, 6 months here, a year here. It's never going to bother me. And if it does, you're not going to see that it bothers me.
Right.
I was a very guarded, very angry kid. And then when I got locked up at 24, 23, 24, that all kind of slowly faded. Not at first. I was still I'm a convict, you're an officer. Like I was very confrontational and argumentative with a lot of people. But over time that faded, and then my daughter was born, and then PTSD popped up on the scene, and my mentality just completely changed. So, but it was a long process to get rid of that anger and the fuck you because you're a cop mentality. I was a really aggressive person. I would fight correctional officers. I'd fight inmates. I'd fight people at school, on the street, in a bar. I really genuinely did not give a single fuck about my own life.
It's such a rough thing to have to describe to anybody who doesn't know what that really feels like. And I think it is truly only people that have experienced the true depths of what a real crippling addiction is like to get. It's just, but I think you did a pretty good job describing it, if it's possible. So.
Yeah. I was really sick for a long time. I had track marks all the way up from the very top of my arm all the way to the bottom of my wrist, on my hands. So that's all inked over now. But I would, I just wanted to die. And there's it's so dark. This is taking a really hard left. But I almost took my own life on several occasions, whether that was a really big shot or I almost shot myself in Arkansas a couple of times. So it was just something that I never thought I could recover from. I didn't think I could be sober. I didn't even have that terminology. I thought the only way out of drug dealing and drug using was to no longer live. And that is that's just a pit of hopelessness that I never want anyone to go through, so I'm very proud that I pulled myself out of it, but it came at a really high price. I've been through a lot of stuff. So if anyone's out there still struggling with addiction and you think you can't get out of that, you are so wrong. And that's addiction lying to you. That's your mental health lying to you, So to think that my only option was to not be alive is just such a heartbreaking thing to even say out loud. So
I mean, I appreciate you going that far, because I think suicide is something I've tried to talk about on TikTok. Videos get taken down right away.
Yeah.
They do not allow suicide talk at all. And it's something that, as a mental health advocate, I really do need to talk more about. And when it comes to addiction and it comes to mental health, suicide at the time seems like the only option. I know when I was struggling with addiction, I wonder if it's a common thought with people struggling with addiction, because when you hit that low point, I mean, you feel like there are no other options. I was in the same place where I had almost taken my life several times, a few times just because I was delusional and the voices were telling me to harm myself. And so it's something that we need to talk about more. And I appreciate you being brave enough to talk about it, because it's something that no one wants to bring up first. And it's something that, as people who have struggled with addiction, and I know a lot of people in jail and prison who have tried or contemplated doing it as well. I don't know if you guys remember. I remember the first person in jail that I saw try to take their own life with very little resources to do so. But people get to the point where they feel like there's no other option.
Right.
And it's a tough conversation to have, but it's something that we do have to talk about, especially as people who advocate for prison reform and mental health and stuff like that.
Well, it's a tough conversation. I think it's a tough conversation because it's a scary conversation to have for most people, and really to anybody, it'd be a scary conversation. I know it is for me because I've had those moments. It's scary to talk about those moments. Those are things that I'd much rather pretend weren't real and aren't real in my life. But yeah, it's definitely a conversation that we need to get going and need to normalize. It's unfortunate that the platform that we're most active on has such weird policies talking about such an important issue, but that's where we're at.
Well, and so my other thing, and this is something like how we started talking about addiction today, being when we were in that moment, it made sense to us. I look back and I'm so confused how I ever felt low enough to consider taking my own life. And it's something that it's like, it's genuine. It's genuinely just confusing to me because I would not have anything that I have now if it wouldn't have been for, me going through what I went through, me being able to share my story. And so I look back and I'm just like, it's so frustrating that like that was almost the option, that like all three of us could possibly not be here right now, which is insane to me. It's insane to me how many people you see walking down the street that have almost, taken their own lives or tried to take their own lives and weren't successful. And I know specifically there's a mental health advocate I want to reach out to who talks specifically about suicide and suicide awareness and prevention. And it's something that, I think it's tough to talk about and it's tough to hear, but we need to talk about it because all the studies have shown that talking about it will not increase someone's chances of doing it. So I'm actually trained in suicide prevention. And so I've done enough research to know that everyone thinks that talking about it is going to give people ideas. If they're thinking about it, they're already thinking about it,
Out of pure curiosity, what exactly, and I'm really not doing this as a setup for a roast, believe it or not, but what is like the training for someone to do suicide hotline prevention and stuff like that?
So I actually got my suicide prevention training when I went to become a recovery coach. And that's part of becoming a recovery coach is you have to do, it's an online training where they walk you through the signs of suicide and like what to look for in people. And it's really beneficial. I wasn't a recovery coach for very long because I had motivational speaking come up in my nonprofit, but it's training that I'm so glad I did because it's the little things like people telling jokes about suicide that you brush off, or people being like really, really obvious that they don't want to live anymore and we take it as a joke. It having that knowledge makes me feel so much better. And it's things that even if you've been a part of it and you've been suicidal, you might not recognize you actively did. And so it was a learning experience for myself too.
It's interesting. I've never been able to talk to anybody who actually did that as a job. I've always wanted to know like who's on the other, because I've called that hotline before, especially when I was doing heroin. There were times where like the withdrawals were so bad, suicide seemed pretty decent. I didn't have something for one reason or another, and I can remember calling once or twice. I can't ever remember the conversation for the life of me, but it's interesting. It's interesting to know what you guys go through on that end. So.
I think we need to do better in jail and prison because you mentioned a minute ago, like the first person, do we remember the first people that we saw try to commit suicide in jail? And that was me. I was the first person that I saw go through that. And I was going through detox. I was just angry. I just said it. I didn't do anything. I was just really upset and I had restless leg syndrome and I was like really struggling, throwing up and all kinds of stuff. And they took everything from me and put me in a really tiny room. And I had this Velcro suit that I call a pickle suit. Everyone calls it something different. And it was the most humiliating, embarrassing, dehumanizing thing I've ever gone through. And I couldn't come out of that room until I said I was no longer serious about taking my life. Jails and prisons don't care about your mental health. They care about physically keeping you alive. That is their job, to physically keep you alive. They feed you the bare minimum amount of food to keep you alive. And mental health is on the very low totem pole when it comes to list of things that they're genuinely concerned about. So we need to do better because our mental health is just as important as our physical health. And, they work in tandem together. So our physical health will deteriorate if our mental health is not healthy. And I don't think people understand that. Stress does immense things to the body. Not having proper mental health treatment does horrible things to the mind and then to the body and to our soul because it's exhausting. So we just need to do better when it comes to treating people in jail and prison. And often when you arrest somebody, that's their fucking rock bottom, dude. Like that could be their wake up call. That could be, you could get them a diagnosis and get them on medication, get them into medically assisted treatment or rehab or some kind of facility to help them. And the fact that we're not doing that to every person that walks in that door is just so sickening.
Well, we could even talk about the process of people being arrested too, because I know when I was arrested, if they would have brought me to a psychiatrist, I probably wouldn't have got my charges, because I guarantee they would have determined earlier than when I finally went out and sought help myself. They probably would have determined before I got locked up that I was suffering from schizophrenia. No one cared. No one even asked if I was struggling with anything. They said, you did this wrong, you're going to jail. There was no discussion about, if I was, why I did it or what I did wrong. And
I think it kind of ties in with what Jessica was saying too. It's really hard to get anybody to feel sympathy for criminals or even people even accused of crimes who aren't even convicted yet. I mean, you and I make similar content every day. I know in my comments, I look forward to at least like 30 to 40 comments that say something similar to, well, don't break the law then, or, oh, that's what happens when you break the law. And it could be like the most gruesome story. Like I could literally be talking about how like somebody murdered somebody and like, well, don't break the law then. Trying to get people to have sympathy for felons or even people accused of crimes is the most difficult fight in the world. I did not expect it to be that difficult.
I literally told a story about a chaplain who raped women, right? And I told that on TikTok, I told it on YouTube, and this fucking comments, most of them are like from decent human beings that are like, I can't believe this is happening. But then you get those people that are like, it's not Disneyland. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Okay,
I think people forget that jail and prison are the punishment, not for us to be treated inhuman while we're there. Like it's supposed to be about rehabilitation. And how are we supposed to do that if people are being, like, seriously, in a women's prison, if people are being raped, how are they supposed to rebuild their lives? How are they supposed to come out better than they went in?
And a chaplain did that.
Yeah. I mean, that doesn't surprise. That doesn't make it any more surprising to me, but
you can always judge a lot. You can judge a lot about a person. I feel successfully about how they feel about prisoners.
Yep.
If someone off the bat is like really comfortable with things that are considered torture and basically stripping someone's human rights, that's a big red flag. I feel.
Yeah.
On
that's individual. All the red flags.
Yeah. Like I feel like if you're on a first date, maybe slip that in casually. I don't know. Don't take dating advice from me, but maybe do take dating advice from me because I think I have this a good thing here. Just slip that into conversation. How do you feel about prisoners?
It's not a terrible idea. I think you could definitely measure someone's humanity by, like you said, it's not that everyone in a prison's a great person, but does the general population of prison deserve to be dehumanized and to be, like you said, essentially some of the things I've seen in there could be torture. Putting a schizophrenic person in solitary confinement with no medication and no ability to go to get a diagnosis, that was torture for me, and I'm sure you guys have also seen it, but it's insane to me that people just, and they always justify it. You know what almost always made me want to fight COs? When you would complain about something or bring up an issue and they would say, well, if you don't like it, don't come to jail. I've never been so close, and I have nothing against COs, whatever. You're just doing a job. But for my circumstances, especially, I fell asleep while driving. Like, I'm not a hardcore criminal. I didn't rob anyone. I didn't stab anyone. Like, I fell asleep while having a schizophrenic episode, and you're acting like I wanted to come in here. It's so stupid. That phrase makes me physically ill.
I distinctly remember being kidnapped and put in a cop car and taken to jail. So I didn't want to go there. But at the same time, I do take full responsibility. I know that I was breaking the law. I deserved double my sentence. I was sentenced to 5 years the last time. I definitely deserved 10. I know that I did, and when I was arrested, I was at the point in my life where I was like, I just take me forever because I have to get out of this world. Like, I'm not going to survive meth use. I was 80 pounds and I was so just skinny and sick, and I was desperate and tired, and I had no fight left in me. So I was like, take me to prison right now, bro. I don't give a fuck. Like, please. I was really just at my rock bottom. So it's weird how you see correctional officers, not all of them. I never want to speak in generalizations, but you see a lot of them have this like superiority complex, and like they think that they're so far above you, and then they're bringing drugs in. And it's like, I'm here for drugs. Like, this makes no sense. I'm not like a mathematician, but 2 + 2 is not equal 4 here, man. Like, you're talking shit because I'm a drug dealer, but you're bringing in drugs, or you're trying to hook up with the inmates, or you're doing all kinds of weird things on the side. Like, this is just a whole school of criminals, and some of them wear a uniform and a badge, and some of us are in orange. Yep. So that's what's so wrong with the system. So I never want to be like, oh, it should be like Holiday Inn. I didn't ask for a pedicure and a pillow, bitch. I asked for like clean water.
Basic human rights. I asked for the basic rights you'd give a prisoner of war. That's what we're going to the table with,
Water that's not brown, medical care, and like basic human rights.
Yeah.
And I think that's what everyone expects. Anytime we complain, what I mean is anytime we bring up an issue with jails or prisons, people act like that's what we're trying to do, is make it I don't know if you guys have seen Norwegian prisons. I would go stay there in a heartbeat. And I'm not even asking for that. I just wanted to be able to when I knew that I needed to get help for my mental health, I wanted to be able to go do that. And I couldn't. No one would help me. They all just looked at me like I was a joke. When I got brought into the prison and they asked, are you suicidal? And I said, I guess. They didn't dive into that any further. They just let it be. And I was like, okay, well, that seems, why ask the question then?
It's a box they have to check on paperwork. And now we have enough data to prove the fact that prison does not work when over 60% of inmates leave with PTSD and more than 65% return to prison. Recidivism rates tell us everything we need to know. But the really interesting thing is people want to complain about tax dollars, but those people that are so loud about it want to do absolutely nothing to reduce the cost to the taxpayer, which would be rehabilitating offenders so they don't return. So it's like you want to complain about your $4 a month that go to prison, but you don't want to do anything about it. Okay, Jeff. Makes no sense. Jeff.
I think, I'm not really a big conspiracy guy, but I think there's something to be said that at this point in America, we would be too afraid to get rid of the mass incarceration system because it is our new class system in a way. We have a built-in underworld of society of people who have been incarcerated that we can blame a lot of things on, that we can, say can't have all these rights. People aren't going to notice, it's almost unnecessary evil of a society to have that group of people.
Yeah.
And I think we've very conveniently given ourselves up as tribute for that.
We
I-
need prison. We need prison to keep dangerous people out of society, to protect everyone. That is so
Right.
crucial, right? However, to lock up everyone for everything related to drugs, to lock up people going through mental health episodes that just genuinely need help, that is where the system is flawed. And in the early 80s, our inmate population increased by like 500% because of the war on drugs. So there's no reason that the land of the free should incarcerate more citizens per capita than any other nation in the world. What we're doing is gross, and we desperately need reform in this country. And I think that starts with decriminalizing drugs and looking at mental health not as a crime, but as a health crisis, just like addiction in this country. And we need to get help to people that need it. And I think if we ended up doing that, we would see an amazing change to this world.
I don't think people are really at a place where they'd be willing to even try that, because obviously these are things that we know would work just because other places have tried them and they work.
Yeah.
But if that was the case, we would do that here in America. There was a lot of people that would have to stand up and say, whoops. I mean, because we have passed a lot of laws and given a lot of money to pumping in the police state for a long time. And I just don't see that many politicians willing to stand up in a room of people and say, whoops.
So
Yeah.
we vote to bring in new politicians
Yeah,
together.
Well, and Jess, that's why you're my favorite person in the entire world, is because you basically just summed up what Zach is probably sick of hearing me say at this point, which is I personally believe there are more people in jail and prison that are in need of psychiatric facilities and recovery clinics than actually need to be in prison. And you can see it anytime you go to a jail or prison. There are so many people actively struggling from addiction, from mental health issues, untreated mental health issues, and putting them in a prison, all it does is put them around potentially actually bad people. I know I didn't know how to make meth until I went to jail and met a guy who makes meth. And now I know that information only because I went to jail. So, like, how does that benefit me? How did anything that happened to me in jail benefit me? Except I would argue it's the best training for people to be criminals because they know what to do not to get caught next time. And it seems so stupid to me that we're not actively trying to make it a place where people can go get the help they need. Because like you said, there are bad people in there and we do need prisons, but at the level we have them right now, it doesn't make any sense.
I have met probably 2 or 3 truly evil people that, like, you sat next to them and you could feel how evil they were, and you're like, whoa, dude, like you really should not have a release date. Like, you're fucking creeping me out just sitting here watching TV. But that didn't happen very often. I met more people that needed help than were true criminals. And the reason why they were criminals is because they were trying to get an illegal substance to ingest in their own body. And it just never made any sense to me. But you do meet some really sketchy people. It was always like crimes against children that I'd be sitting next to people and I'm like, you're evil. Like, you're a different kind of evil and you need to be here.
Yeah.
I think everyone knows what that's like. Anyone who's done any sort of amount of time, you know, your first pod you get to in county or whatever, it probably has some like local goons, nothing too big, you know. You think it's not that bad, and then you get to maybe like a larger facility after you get sentenced, or you know, if you go upstate, suddenly you're next to people that you're like, wow, you fucking belong here.
Yeah.
And the reality of it sets in that not everyone's here because they just made a mistake. You know, there's a reason that these walls are so high and these bars are so thick.
For sure.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's important that for people that are actively talking about prison reform, I think it's people that don't understand when we say prison reform, we're not saying get rid of all prisons. We need prisons. No one's arguing that point. But they need to be, I think they need to be way less filled than they currently are. I think people need to be going to facilities that help them because, and I believe it was the 50s or 60s when they did the deinstitutionalization, where they basically got rid of all of the places that were psychiatric facilities. People ended up just filtering into jails and prisons. And so now instead of having people in facilities for their mental health, we have people that got put out on the streets. And the studies have shown that that still has a backlash to today because there isn't very good places for people to go that are struggling with schizophrenia. Like a schizophrenic person, if they don't have friends or family, they don't have medication, if they're delusional, how are they going to support themselves? How are they going to do any of the things society expects them to do? Which is why the homeless rate and the prison rate of people with schizophrenia is insane. And we're not looking for ways to resolve that. And I know this is just me being a schizophrenia advocate, but it's not just schizophrenia either. It's all mental health. It's all addictions. Like the fact that we're just putting these people back into jail and prison just to get out and then go back in because they don't know anything else. They don't know how to support themselves besides that. Like, what do you expect? I think, everyone always says that Einstein quote that if you do the same thing over and over and expect different results, that's insanity. And I think that's what we do with the prison system.
What's funny is like I was talking to a friend of mine that, is older, almost 50. And he's like, I can't get a job at McDonald's, but I can get a pound of meth on front. Like, what am I supposed to do? You know what I mean?
Yikes. Yeah, that's a fucking predicament right there.
But here, we can show a perfect example of people that don't understand. Someone just left this comment. It says, this conversation is so stupid. Criminals with podcast, talking like they know it all. Bunch of BS. Thank you,
please
Blue
let me go
Panther.
first. Please let me go first.
Okay, well, I just want to thank them for proving our exact point. But yes, let's all have a moment to talk to this person. Lou, buckle in for a moment.
Okay, so hi, Lou. How are you? It's good to see you here. I am not just a podcaster. I have a bachelor's degree in correctional program support services. I am a prison reform advocate, and I help people get into treatment and rehab every single day. So you can hate on what we do, but we are saving lives here, and the work that Cody and Zach do is invaluable. So I'll let them take it from there.
Ooh, can I go next, Zach?
By all means, sister.
Let him go next.
All right, Lou. So my name's Cody. You might not know me. I actually started a nonprofit organization that helps people with criminal records find jobs. And I would like to know what you're actively doing to help people with criminal records, because this is my everyday life. I didn't have to start this nonprofit. I don't actively make money from this nonprofit. You know what else I do? I run a podcast where we talk about the problems in the criminal justice system, but we also talk about what we can do better as people who are addicts and people who have been a part of the criminal justice system. Zach, why don't you take it from here, bud?
Lou, my name is Zach Galloway. You may recognize me from the pictures on your girlfriend's phone. Listen, we're not just criminals. We're criminals that are entertaining, Lou. This is important, Lou. I feel like you need to hear this because there's a lot of people out there who are just criminals. We're fucking entertaining criminals. God damn it, we've made a market for ourselves. So get it straight. Other than that, pretty much on point. It is a little ridiculous to hear criminals talk about the justice system, but I think that speaks to more that we're kind of good at it, so we made it our thing. But
we can
entertaining criminals.
We did it. We can talk about all this stuff because we've gone through it, and we saw that side, that ugly, dirty, grungy side of addiction, of prison, of mental illness, and we beat the odds. And, thankfully we're all still here, and we can, add such an impact to our community by speaking out against all the things that go on behind those walls. So it's great to see you here, Lou. Hope you subscribe.
I absolutely love that person just showed up right when we were talking about like how stigmatized people are about people that have criminal records and people with addiction. And thank you for that, Lou. That was very entertaining for all of us. I can't wait to like snip that clip and put it on TikTok and Instagram and everything. But honestly, we should be the people go to when they're asking about prison reform and what it's like in prisons, because we're the people who lived it and experienced it. And it's not something we got to do on and off. It was our everyday life for however long we were in there. And to treat us like criminals when we're just people who have made mistakes, to treat us like we're inhuman because, we did a few things that probably shouldn't have been done.
A lot of things.
A lot of things, yes. But it comes down to the fact that look at where we are now. We've all changed. Like she just said, we beat the recidivism rates. At this point, all of us would have been back in already. And we're not only beating it, but we're crushing it. We all got awesome stuff going on. Hundreds of thousands of followers, people wanting to know what we think about mental health and the criminal justice system. And I'm just so pumped to have you two here with me today. And I'm so pumped that Lou came in and gave us the ability to yell at someone for a little bit.
I know.
Thanks for the content, Lou.
What's funny is like before I started YouTube, I prepared myself for all the hate that I was going to get. And I'm like, they're going to say this about prison, about addiction. They're going to call you a junkie. They're going to talk about your teeth and your eyebrows, and it's never going to end. I never recognized how much love and support I would get. I never thought I'd get kindness and love. So the kindness is so overwhelming in such an amazing way. And now the hate is hilarious. And it's like, remember when you were trying to talk yourself up to tell everyone that you were a heroin addict, and now you're like laughing at random people named Lou on the internet? Like, I've come so far.
That's Zach's thing to do. It literally is to laugh at random people who act stupid on the internet.
It's been a journey. That's true. It's my whole shtick.
Well, and not only that, but like even Colin Ray proves that like the more we get hate, the bigger we get. One of my biggest videos was me responding to a hate comment. So I think people forget they just fuel us. Your hate fuels us.
It is the spark that lights the flame against the resistance, or for the resistance, whatever the Star Wars line is.
Wow. I feel bad for you after that. I feel embarrassed.
We're going to end it on that nerdy Star Wars quote right there.
Yeah.
We can't end it right there. You don't like Star Wars?
Always got to end on a strong note. Always got to end on a strong note. Jessica Kent, ladies and gentlemen.
But seriously, Jess, thank you so much for being on here with us today. I feel like we had some really awesome conversations. I do want to take a moment to remind everyone to go check out Manscaped and use code GALLOWOP for 20% off and free shipping. That is GALLOWOP, as in Galloway and WAP, GALLOWAP, GALLOWOP.
I can tell you're enjoying this.
Why did you make that the code?
Do you not know the story behind GALLOWOP?
No.
The very first schizophrenic story time we did 2 truths and a lie, and we all lost, and we had to do we had to both do the WAP dance. So I started #GALLOWOP.
Oh.
I don't know why mine was so more popular than yours, but it seemed to be remembered more. Now say goodnight, Cody.
All right. Thank you guys so much, guys. Thank you so much for having Jess here, and we will definitely be having you back at another point in time. We appreciate you being here. Any last words for the people, Zach?
No.
Fuck you, Lou.
Yeah, thank you, Lou, for the content. Everyone have a good night.
Stay woke, sheeple.